Hey guys! In lesson number 5 video, we did factoring trinomials. We covered up both types of factoring trinomials and we also understood the steps when a is equal to 1 and a is not equal to 1. And what is this a value? A is your leading coefficient. Your leading coefficient could be 1 or leading coefficient could not be 1. We understood how to do the factoring in both cases. And also we did examples when your a value is equal to 1. In this video, we will be covering up when your a or your leading coefficient is -1. So we will be taking up examples when a is equal to -1. Steps for trinomial factoring would stay the same as it was in lesson number 5. Let's take up the first example. If my question is -x squared -3x plus 54. Now always remember, whenever your a is negative, so if we write down a, b, if we write down a, b, and c separately, so no number here means it's a -1. Value is a -1, my b value is a -3, and my c value is a positive 54. Before finding the product of a and c, we would first factor this negative sign out so that my a becomes positive. So that will be my first step if my a is a -1 type of a trinomial. Whenever I factor out -1, I would be left out as a positive x squared, a positive 3x, a minus 54. So all that is going to happen when you factor your -1 out is that for each term of your polynomial, the signs would flip. So this was a negative, becomes a positive. This was a negative, becomes a positive. This was a positive, becomes a negative. After taking this -1 out, we will proceed with the question in the same way as we did in lesson number 5. Now we have our a as 1. So this is the new values. B as 3. And c as -54. So the first step is to multiply a and c, which is 1 times -54 gives us -54. And that's my product. My product is -54. My sum that I'm looking for is 3. Which two numbers multiply will give me -54? And that is a -9 and a positive 6. When I multiply, I get a -54, and when I add a -9 and a positive 6, I get a -3. Now you see, I don't want a -3, I want a positive 3. Since I want a positive 3, all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be flipping the signs of the numbers. So instead of using -9 and positive 6, I'll be using positive 9 and -6. So all I have to do is I have to write on -1. Instead of this, I will be writing down x plus 9 and x minus 6. And this is my answer. Let's take up another example. And the example is -x squared plus x plus 20. Again, in this case, my a is -1. So I'm going to be factoring -1 out. When I factor -1 out, all the terms are going to get flipped signs. So a now becomes plus x squared. This becomes minus x. This becomes minus 20. I'm going to be working on this bracket now. My a new value is 1. B is -1 and c is -20. All I have to do is just find the product of AC, which is 1 times -20, that is a -20. So I'm looking for a product to be -20 and I'm looking for my sum to be -1 because my sum is supposed to be equal to b value. Which two numbers will give me that answer is? My two numbers will be 4 and 5, and I multiply, I get a 20 because I need a -20, so one of these numbers have to be negative. How do I decide which one to be negative? Is I would look at the sign of this. Because I need a -1 as a sum, so I will make the bigger number as negative. If the sum was a positive, then I would make the smaller number negative. In this case, my product is -20. My sum is -1. Now I'm just going to use these two numbers, 4 and -5, to write on my answer. So I would write down x plus 4 and x minus 5. And that gives me the final answer. If my question was another way around, so negative x minus x plus 20, here also my a is negative 1, so I'm going to factor negative 1 out. I'll be left with x squared plus x minus 20. Now my new a value is a 1, my b value is a 1, and my c value is a negative 20. So my first step is to find the product of AC, which will be equal to 1 times negative 20. That's negative 20. I want a product of negative 20, and now I want a sum of a positive 1. Two numbers that give me a product of negative 20 is 4 and 5. Sum, I can get 1 by subtracting these two numbers. Because I want a positive 1, so my bigger number is going to be positive in this case. So this is positive, this is negative. When I multiply these two, I get a negative 20. When I add these two, I get a positive 1. So the two numbers I have now is a negative 4 and a positive 5. My result is x minus 4, x plus 5. This we are done factoring, in which a value is a negative 1.